All right, I didn't get as far as Jim. I got to 9. I don't have 10. I ran out of slides. This is a couple of things from my book, Urban Planning for Dummies. If you happen to have sat in one of these special chairs marked with yellow star duct tape, you've won a copy. You can trade that in for a copy of the book from Angela at the back of the room when you leave. How do I advance? There we go. This is smart planning by dumb planners, or dumb planning by smart planners. Sometimes what we do is a little nebulous to the public. We have to do it, we know we should do it, but sometimes it doesn't quite pan out that people exactly know what we're doing. So I'll talk about ways in which plans in our process can seem sometimes dumb to the general public, how we can avoid what seems like maybe dumb planning, and I'm throwing out some examples that I talk about more fully elsewhere that can maybe help us, if not be smart, look smart. And again, maybe the difference isn't as big as we think it is. Sometimes we put too much emphasis on the big picture. Not everyone wants to hear about things like climate change mitigation or metropolitan transportation. You know, they want to come out and hear about, you know, potholes. And that can create some issues for us from time to time. We need to gauge public opinion sometimes before we get into big pictures, and we always need to justify our case. Chicago's climate plan is a nice example of this, sucking up to our president. Raleigh's 2030 plan has a nice sort of set of why we're part of the regions in it. That's sort of a nice example of this. TMI, planners, we love data. Hand us unexpurgated census data, we'll read it for days. Most people don't work that way. Data smog, intimidation, all these things can sort of get in the way, if not in a confusing way, in an overwhelming way. Try to make it user-friendly. Try to pass it out in digestible chunks. Most people don't read numbers for a living. Minneapolis and Santa Monica have some nice sustainability things that are very easy for people to get into. The great state of Michigan, where I lived until a year ago, is now mandated local performance dashboards. They're a little superficial, but they're the kinds of things that people do glom onto. But this isn't Portland. I think there's an entire generation of planning commissioners, particularly in the Midwest, who would rather slit their wrists than hear one more example about why Portland is great. Hey, you are, but sometimes, you know, saying, hey, the other guys are doing it better is not quite what people want to hear. If you are going to bring in best practices, adapt them locally, and figure out how it compares to what you can come up with on your own. Up in the Hudson Valley in New York, they've sort of taken smart growth and tweaked it in their own special way. There's probably some consumers of Southern California COG's regional plan here that tried to sort of throw some voluntary ideas out. Nice example of, hey, you could do this, and if you don't, you know, you'll figure it out. We all try to develop vision as a longtime glasses wearer. Sometimes it gets a little blurry. We can be overly narrow, we can be overly broad, and sometimes we use fuzzy concepts, things that people, again, don't understand right off of the bat. So try to focus on specific issues, and there is a balance between the big picture, open-ended stuff and the specific stuff. Tulsa's got a nice thing where they worked with scenarios to visualize and bring big vision things down to things they could actually do. Last year's award winner, Vision North Texas, again, not even a plan that has any statutory implementation to it. They said, hey, but here's what you could really do. Because again, if we paint sort of big pictures, you know, we don't want to be the impressionist school of planners. We want to be a little more realist. We want to make the fruit bowl look like a fruit bowl. For those of you that grew up in the Midwest, the Meineke slogan ought to be familiar to you. Everyone's thinking about money. We don't want to have winners and losers. We don't want to drive up costs. And it's hard to not deal with these issues because many people are still waiting for the new normal. When can we go back to spending money like we used to? And that's very tricky. So we need to keep an eye on the community checkbook, and maybe we need to make baby steps for a couple of years. Sometimes we forget to follow through. We forget to put things in our plans and projects that really convince people that these things are going to happen. We need to be reasonable with our expectations. We need to make sure everyone knows what they're doing in terms of stakeholder roles. City of Grand Rapids plan that they worked on at the beginning of the 2000s, I think in the back of it, a version of it, actually has the phone numbers of people responsible for implementation. So, you know, accountability, people. And some things we have ideas for that really no one's even responsible for doing anyways. Those of you that have HUD Sustainable Communities grants, they have a nice capacity building element to do things that no one's ever done before, so you need to develop the capacity to do them. Otherwise, it's just one more, you know, discussion group about regionalism. Sometimes we don't fit in all the puzzle pieces, things like health or education, topics that we don't normally put into land use oriented plans, but increasingly people want to put those in, they're important to put in. Richmond, California's got a nice element. Things like safe growth and smart growth audits help us sort of think about what we might have missed or how we can be more responsive to the community. What am I supposed to do with this? Here's the plan. Read this 500-page document. Doesn't always work real well. And a lot of folks aren't aware of how their community's plan impacts them, and that can really sort of be a barrier to acceptance and support. Making these things more user-friendly with how to use this plan sections, quick guides. When you get when you get a PC, you've got the manual, and then you've got the the one-page glossy fold-out, how to set it up. You don't read the manual, you read the quick setup thing, and for a lot of users, that's going to be appropriate. Chicago CMAP's sort of done a nice version of that well. And lastly, because I didn't get to 10, I only got to 9, nobody asked me. I think there's this, in the electronic age, there's this increasing demand from folks to be invited into the planning process. And when that happens, when folks don't feel like, hey, where was my personal invitation hand-delivered on a silver platter? Well, that can sort of get into the way of consensus building, and we don't quite get our problems right, and can also create legitimacy problems at some extreme. Let people know different ways they can participate. Some techniques, especially social media, can be used to reach the long tail of the audience. People that just want to know they could have been involved, where there might be a weak tie, but that's enough for a lot of people just so they don't feel left out. I just heard about the folks at Imagine Austin. They did a great community guide that explained exactly what they were going to do and how they were going to do it, had some nice ground rules. The folks down in Australia did a Wikipedia version of their plan. So we really need to think about sort of lots of different ways we can get out there and remember, the dummies are the folks that live with all of you guys, and we need to make sure they're happy. So thanks a lot.
Okay, so now we've seen the second technique, which is I'm going to bribe the audience and then they'll love me, right? So if you ever apply for one of these, think how you can bribe the audience. Okay, our next speaker is Nathaniel Z. Hotzel. I hope I've pronounced it correctly. He's a third-year doctoral student at the School of City and Regional Planning, Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta. Thank you.
Good evening.